Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Screen. I am your host, Jason Azevedo, and we are joined today by James Haeck. Hey, James, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing as well as can be expected given the circumstances.
Yes, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. At least you typically grow your hair out, so this is not too bad for you, right?
Yeah, it's a little shaggy. I could get it trimmed in the back just a little bit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So we have
Okay.
lots of questions from the community, but we'll do a couple announcements here real quick before we get going here. First of all, of course, we want to thank everyone for joining us on the RealmSmith Twitch. We will be doing some giveaways tonight. D&D Beyond is an official partner of ours now for our channel, and so tonight we are going to be giving away a digital download of The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, which my friend over here, James Haeck, actually helped to write a number of portions of it, and we're so excited to have him here. So, in the chat, if you want to win or get entered into it, it's for subscribers only, and it's hashtag Wildemount. That is WILDEMOUNT. Hashtag Wildemount. We will draw that at the end of the session. And that's awesome. Last night we had episode 7 of Tides of Wildemount, and we actually came and finished the final encounter of Tide of Retribution, which is the adventure that James wrote from The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. And it went great, and it was crazy and scary, and the whole party almost died. It was awesome. But we'll talk to James all about that. But that is why we have him here today, is to kind of pick his brain about that adventure and his experience in general about the adventure and writing part of that book with Matt Mercer and the wonderful people at Critical Role.
My brain is open. Let the picking begin.
That's awesome. That's great. And then Thursday is Player's Table with Joel Auger, and that is a player's look at what happens here. Also tonight we have subscriber-only chat. We've gone back to that because it's getting insane when it comes to the questions that we get. So we're just trying to give some perks to our subscribers. So it is subscriber-only chat. And if you're interested in being involved, you can spend bits to ask a question, or you can subscribe with Twitch Prime or become a tier 1, 2, or 3 subscriber. One thing we launched last week, which has exploded in our Discord, is the ability to join the Revelry as a pirate. Coming out of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, we actually made all of our subscribers at different tiers pirates in the Revelry, and they have their own Discord channels where they are currently speaking in pirate with all the R's and mateys, and they're role-playing live. And then we are also giving the opportunity for them to do quests. Tier 3 become captains, and they can recruit crew members for their ships and upgrade their ships. There's all kinds of craziness going on. So we're super thankful for that. Check that out, and you can look at our Discord. Shadster or Prometheus will post that link in our chat for you to kind of take a look at what that looks like, and then get help from them moving forward. That is all the housekeeping. That is complete. James, you said you are surviving.
That indeed is true. It's the best way to say it.
Are you getting lots of writing done, is the question.
Yes, there's no other way to say it. I'm getting lots of writing done. As people may see, I've taken kind of the week off from posting new articles on D&D Beyond. The quarantine and ends up making everything just a little bit harder.
Sure.
When you've been stuck in your home for months on end.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this break will do double duty. First of all, it will give me a chance to take a breather and recharge the creative tanks. Being able to and the second thing that it lets me do is write ahead a little bit. That's the one thing that's always most challenging, is
Right.
the next deadline is always right around the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're writing for, and 3 articles go out every week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So
Yeah.
If you're writing something, if I'm writing something, good odds are it's going to go out the next day, and then all that work starts over again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
but I've also been taking time to watch TV, read books, all of those things refill the creative tank. Like seeing people for me is the number one thing that refills me, even as a fairly introverted person. But a good TV show, a good book. I ordered a book that Chris Perkins recommends all the time, a nonfiction Stephen King memoir called On Writing,
Oh,
which is
cool.
basically the writer's Bible for anyone who writes creatively.
Yeah.
Comes Chris Perkins recommended, comes James Haeck recommended. So
Cool.
if you're a writer, you should have it.
There you go. Inside scoop. That's great.
Yeah, and I finished the final season of the new She-Ra show. And
Oh, cool.
That has set my brain alight with cool new storytelling things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So every now and then, a great piece of media comes along. And even if it's not perfect, something about it just kind of shoots a ray of inspiration into your brain.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings movies do that every time I watch them.
Mm-hmm.
The game Undertale did it for me back in 2015. She-Ra's doing it for me now. So there's always something to be inspired by.
That's hilarious. Actually, I thinking about inspiration from weird places. My kids and I the other night watched the Dora the Explorer movie. The new kind of live action one, and my kids were very much into Dora the Explorer back in the day, and it pokes a lot of fun at itself and at the show that was animated, obviously when my kids were much younger, but we have lots of temples and jungles and things happening in on the Menagerie Coast, and so that has given me weird and welcome inspiration that I was looking for that part of the world. So you just never know where inspiration will come from. Even Dora.
Pardon me for a second.
Yeah.
I need to close my closet door. The cats are running a little bit amok, so
Yeah,
I'll be
good.
back in 10
no
seconds.
problem. No worries. We are going to be asking James some questions as we go here. If you want to ask James a question, just write question in capital letters and then the question that you want to ask him, and then we'll answer those. And I have a whole lot of questions already set up here from Shadster, our mod, and of course we want to thank Shadster, our moderator, and Prometheus Bound for all the wonderful work that they continually do for us on our channel. We'll start off with the general questions, and then we'll get into the fun ones. The general question is, what was it like to be on the writing team for Explorer's Guide to Wildemount? And specifically, what were you responsible for writing in that whole experience?
Oh my gosh, it's surreal. I try not to be too much of a fan because I have a professional relationship with Matt Mercer and the other fine folks, James Introcaso and Chris Lockey, who are part of the writing team for that book. But man, it's impossible to not be just a little bit of a fan, even as a professional, even for people who aren't like on the celebrity spectrum like Matt Mercer is.
Yeah.
Let's work from home, baby.
That's good. It's all good. We're used to it.
The best thing to be as a creative person is to be a fan of anyone who you're working with.
Yeah.
And actually, if I can get into game advice, this works as DMing advice also. If you're not a fan of your players and their characters, your game is not as good as it could be.
Yeah. True.
But like I'm a big fan of Matt's as a creative person, as a storyteller. So I get fired up whenever I have the chance to work together with him because I know that he will make my ideas better, even if he's not like actively working on them, even if he's just kind of around.
Yeah.
I will, my posture will straighten a little bit, so to speak. My best work will start to come out of me.
Yeah.
There are definitely people who have the opposite effect, right? The nerves set in and things get less good than they could be, but that's just something you got to train out of yourself.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the general what it's like on the writing team. What was the second half of that question?
What were you specifically responsible? Yeah.
More than anything, there's kind of a pet system of mine called the Heroic Chronicle that's in that book.
Which is awesome.
A lot.
Yeah. It's awesome.
I'm really happy to hear you say that. It's something that I think every setting should have. Yeah. It's something that gets compared a lot to the This Is Your Life section of Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And there are many similarities there. They're both kind of like life path systems.
Yeah.
I got inspired to write the Heroic Chronicle after I read R. Talsorian Games' The Witcher RPG, which had a very robust life path system. The thing that really got me into that system, the thing that sparked my imagination there, was because Artel Saurian Games' life path system was very tied to the setting of The Witcher, right? It's a Witcher RPG, so you better be getting something that sets you in that milieu.
Right.
So I just rolled up a character. When I was looking for that game, I knew precious little about the Witcher setting. Now the Netflix show is out, and I know a little bit more. But
sure,
when I was looking over the game, I was like, I know that Geralt's a Witcher. I know that Ciri's a Witcher.
yeah.
I know there's a lot of death.
Yeah.
I know there's some racism. It's a bleak fantasy setting. But man, that's it.
Yeah.
And so I went over that life path system, and it's got all that harsh texture that you would expect out of a Witcher RPG. You roll to see how many of your parents and siblings have survived into the present day, stuff like that. And I read that and it's like, okay, I want to make something like this.
Right.
And it's not like life paths have happened before, but so I don't have any pretensions that this system is like breaking new ground, so to speak. But it's something that I feel that D&D does not do very often.
It's true.
In my experience playing D&D games, people roll up a character, and rolling up a D&D character is so complex and mechanically dense already that once you're done with the stats, most people are kind of like, done?
Yep.
Unless you have a couple of sentences of backstory to work with that you just wanted to write down, you're kind of burned out at the end of making a D&D character.
Yeah.
Or at least that's been my experience when I'm not like uber hyped for a campaign already.
Yeah.
So having some kind of structure there, something that you can roll on if you want, or choose from if you really want to get specific, and moreover something that hooks you into a setting.
Yeah.
That's really useful.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the Hero Chronicle and the This Is Your Life from Xanathar's.
Right.
Xanathar's is kind of focused on the vanilla D&D experience, which is very useful. It's broadly useful. That's its greatest strength.
Right.
The Heroic Chronicle is very specific, and likewise, that's its greatest strength.
Yeah.
Heroic Chronicle is specific to Wildemount, and I made one on D&D Beyond in 2 parts for the Sword Coast of Faerun, and a lot of its material is quite different than what's in the Wildemount Heroic Chronicle. The towns are different. The attitude towards different social classes are different. The attitude towards like what kind of fantastical events could happen are quite different. The politics are different. Wildemount is defined by its politics. We
know
at the war between the Kryn Dynasty and the Dwendalian Empire. You look at the Revelry Pirates versus the Clovis Concord, Myriad versus all of the governments of all the nations. Right? It's those conflicts that are baked into the Hero Chronicle that make it good. I've even heard of some people using both of them together, Hero Chronicle and This Is Your Life. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
They're 2 great tastes that go great together. They're chocolate and peanut butter.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. But I worked on a number of other things too, particularly plot hooks throughout the book. All throughout Xhorhas and the Dwendalian Empire, we all, Matt, James, Chris, and I, created plot hooks that would pull you into the setting. It's all about setting specificity today,
Yep.
If you're buying a campaign setting, you don't want to read an encyclopedic account of the entire world to get into the setting. You want something small and digestible, and like it's like a knife, right? There's a blade that you can cut straight into the setting, and you can understand it. You can go deep instantly without having to go wide at the same time.
Yeah.
And I wrote this adventure, this thing called Tides of Retribution. I mean,
Just a little adventure.
Yeah. Honestly, my favorite thing about Tides of Retribution, looking back, other than your live play, of course, are the maps that Devin Rue made.
Yes.
For it. One of my favorite parts of the book, in general. Devin Rue's maps they just consistently blow me out of the water. No pun intended.
Yeah.
I gave Wizards, my specifications for the maps in that adventure. And I didn't know that Devin would be doing literally all of the maps in the book. So if you look at the map of the Wave Chaser, It's actually literally the ship that you'll find in Appendix C of the Dungeon Master's Guide. I said, just use this map.
Yeah.
But Devin did all of the other maps for the book. So seeing that map redone in her style, it makes me really happy because her style is so meticulous, right?
Yeah.
It's all in the details there. So you can look at the tablecloth on the table in the captain's quarters and stuff like that. So the details that like maybe were present in the original that you could see in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but they pop differently when Devin does it. And so it feels very, very lived in
it's a gorgeous book. Front to back. We have a comment from Dan Robotman that says, the Heroes Chronicle system is magnificent. I'm starting a new campaign with my friends soon, and we'll be using it, and not even in the Wildemount setting.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
Very cool.
Very cool.
I've got a lot of requests for people to make an Eberron Hero Chronicle, but I lack the requisite experience with Eberron, I think, to make it as good as it could be.
Yeah.
Faerun I'm solid with. Wildemount, cover to cover, baby. But anything else, that's a lot of research time.
That is.
But you know, actually, my dream would be reaching out to Keith Baker and working with him on a Hero Chronicle because he knows. You know, if anyone knows, he knows.
Yeah.
James White is in my weekly D&D game. Maybe he knows Eberron pretty well too. Maybe I could. No, but he works for Wizards. See, that's the problem. So many of my like favorite design friends like work for Wizards. Yeah. Now Dan Dillon works for Wizards. Like, I can't ask them for help on anything.
No, I know. Dan used to write for us, actually. He did some writing for our adventure boxes, And then, once he went to Wizards, it's, all right, well, we got to find somebody else. He gets busy. Yeah. All right, let's jump into some questions here.
Yes, please.
We have a question from Gary Diamonds, and Gary Diamonds is actually one of the first captains at Tier 3 of the Revelry, of our Revelry Armada. So, very exciting. He plays Captain Whitaker, actually. He asks, I want to create exciting adventures for my crew, but I've never DM'd, ever. So my question is, what is your suggestions for building encounters if I'm brand new to it? What resources would you recommend? What resources would you recommend? Sorry, I lost the question here. What resources would you recommend researching? Thanks, Jason. RealmSmith is amazing. So, what do you think?
Okay. My answer is long and rambling in my brain because my inspiration for encounter building comes from all over the place. Sure. So I'll try and arrange it in a way that makes sense for other humans. My number one suggestion is the D&D Beyond Encounter Builder, and not just because I work for them. The Dungeon Master's Guide provides you with some very specific math for building balanced encounters, and I think that math works well about 90% of the time. It works best in kind of the middle ranges of levels. It is tricky at first level, and once you get into Tier 4, things are so gonzo already that no amount of encounter math can save you. Right. But in like level 3 through the end of Tier 3, the encounter math I think works is whip sharp. So what the D&D Beyond Encounter Builder, which is in open beta, anyone can use it. It's a free tool. It feeds off of the SRD content or any sources that you own on D&D Beyond. So all the stuff you've got there just plugs right in. The thing that is great about it is it's a graphic interface for just plugging monsters and the number of monsters into like a soup of an encounter, and it'll automatically do the encounter math. It'll put all the XP values in. It'll automatically apply the numerically based multipliers, right? Because being outnumbered in D&D is really, really bad. Numbers allow monsters to punch well above their weight class because they can just attack you more often than you can attack them. So all of the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of encounter design is done for you there in terms of like raw math. And that is, I think, where a lot of people stumble.
And we've been using
science part of it, right?
Yeah, and for the last number of episodes, we've been using the encounter builder and combat tracker, actually.
Oh, good. The combat tracker is something I have not had a chance to use very much. It's still in alpha, but it seems very cool.
It is very cool. It doesn't save your status, so between sessions I have to go back and kind of reset the rounds and stuff. But
that's alpha for you.
Yeah, but for managing initiative and hit points, and it's great. I cannot wait for it to hit beta.
Good. I love to hear that.
Very excited.
To see, I don't work on any of that stuff at D&D Beyond, but I know how hard the developers work on stuff like that. So knowing that their work is being vindicated, it warms my heart.
Yeah, no, it's really great, really great. All right.
The other part of all this, I have one last thing to say about encounter building, and this is in some ways the easiest part, and in some ways the hardest part, because it is the art instead of science of encounter building. The most important thing you can do to have a good encounter is not balance. Balance is one of the last things you need for a good encounter. The number one thing you need is a good story. No one will remember the encounter with 3 ettercaps that you had on the road unless there's a good story behind it.
Sure.
A lot of the early encounter of the weeks that I wrote for D&D Beyond are basically simple encounters with a story hook behind them. Those take hour, 2 hours, 3 hours if you're role playing a lot. I recommend stealing them. The work has been done for you, and not just because they're mine. Everything I do to help people do things they've never done before, and that includes DMing and building encounters. But read books, watch movies, watch TV shows, play video games, all of the things that I said refuel your creative inspiration, and man, steal from them all the time. Ideally you'll be stealing from things that your players don't know as well as you do, so they won't say, I remember that encounter from the Conan movie. You'll be like, if you play Dragon Age and they don't, and you want to steal an encounter with Darkspawn and change them all to hobgoblins and orcs and an aberration or two, then you're in business. Right?
Exactly. Or from Dora the Explorer. Or She-Ra, whatever.
And since you are the master of the universe, that's a He-Man joke. Since you're the dungeon master, you can steal from things that are well below the appropriate age range for your group. Literally Dora the Explorer. There's a cool trap in your kids' Dora the Explorer episode. You're like, that could be for a D&D encounter. Do it.
Tune in. Tune in soon for the Menagerie Coast on the next jungle we're in.
And for traps, since we're talking about Dora and jungle temples, those always have traps. Very simple to do traps. There's the little bit in the DMG, not just the sample traps they put for you there, but there's a sample damage by tier table in there. It's tier 1 is a trap should do about a d10 of damage, or a deadly trap should do 2d10 of damage. Take that as a baseline, adjust it as you need. This game is so flexible. If you throw an easy encounter at your players, it's fine.
Totally. That's great. Okay, next question here. And I'm going to preface this question by saying that I make a joke about blaming you and Matt when my players almost die. I can't do that anymore because from now on in, I don't have my handheld. I'm going to have to be writing my own and blazing my own path through Wildemount. But the question is from Philo Munch. I tune in each week to watch as the cast works through Tides of Retribution, which is amazingly crafted. Wanted to ask, did you expect the adventure to have everyone, players and fans, both on the edge of their seat repeatedly as it gets more and more challenging?
Such a sweet question.
It is such a sweet question.
I go into every adventure I write hoping that whoever runs it will make it their own. That's why I write for Dungeons and Dragons rather than for television or for novels or film, regardless of how easy it would be for me to get into any of those mediums. That's why I prefer D&D, is because I love creating things that are my own, but the real joy of creativity for me is in collaboration. And there is no way to collaborate with more people
Yeah.
than by writing an adventure for thousands and thousands of dungeon masters.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the utmost joy for me when, you know, I have a relative expectation that the adventure will be exciting and thrilling, and the danger will keep ramping up, and people will be on the edge of their seat, and like that's the goal for me. It's what I want more than anything. But hearing that, but it's like that's not something I can do.
Right.
At a certain point, my hands my hands leave the keyboard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so hearing that you, Jason, were able to make that happen with the framework that I provided fills my heart with joy that I can't fully express.
Oh, that's cool. And honestly, it is a collaboration, right? It's me taking what you've put to paper and taking all of that inspiration and all of that joy and all of that creativity and then applying it as necessary. And I mean, there's another question that's similar to that question, which is, what was the reasoning behind making this mod so deadly? What makes you think it is not as deadly? And
got a good answer for that.
Yeah, good. And I'm excited to hear it. And that's the thing. Like I stepped into this knowing my players, knowing that I have some new players. That aren't necessarily, don't have all the strategies and tactics of combat kind of down yet. That I actually leveled it down a little bit. Put a couple less shark body abominations in some of the encounters, and just kind of made, you know, and even some of the things from the last encounter down in the sunken Palmaflora, where, you know, players are supposed to get disadvantage when making attacks. I thought they were already at enough disadvantage with not being able to move and all these other things. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to give them disadvantage on that. They're already kind of, you know, shackled as much as I think they need to be. And they narrowly survived, like narrowly survived. And I actually had expected that they wouldn't. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Okay. I will answer that, but there's something I want to get back to regarding our collaborative discussion. I'll put a pin saying I was a theater major in college, and if I forget what I meant to talk about, you can help me by popping that pin.
Okay, got it.
Okay, deadliness.
Yeah. Yes.
I made this adventure. You know, I didn't go into this adventure intending to kill player characters, but I did go into this adventure intending to possibly kill player characters. And let me explain the difference there. 5th edition, for the most part, is a very forgiving system when it comes to death. It's less forgiving at lower levels, more forgiving at higher levels. And so this low-level adventure, I wanted to give players the ability to get in over their heads if they chose to at first level, right? In the Palmaflora opening scenario, there are like 4 or 5 different areas that they can go to with different levels of danger, right? There's the broken bridge, there's the battle on the beach, there's the looters on the sinking side where you could get more treasure. And so there's an element of pushing your luck. Every time you think, I could go for one more encounter, or the wave chaser's right there, we can get out of there. That gives the players a very good way to ratchet the difficulty up and down depending on how they're doing. Has luck been kind to them? Are their tactics good? Well, then let's go for another encounter. Have we rolled a lot of nat ones? Have we got a bunch of new players who don't know their abilities very well? Well, off we go. And that's kind of the first level experience. But as they level up, they reach 3rd level by the end of it. Is the intention. So they're 2nd level. They've got some stuff by the final encounter. The final encounter is hard. There's no two ways about it. But they also have, when I play tested it, they had a bunch of ranged abilities, and they were able to hide, and they had a bunch of ways of using role playing or suggestive enchantments, by which I mean the spell suggestion and enchantment spell, in order to like get the Sahuagin to stand down or break off. But also, I kind of want to urge the player characters to get into a deal with the Sahuagin priestess anyway. So totally. That's a little bit of why it's so hard.
Totally.
But all in all, I have immense faith in the staying power of player characters and in the power for player characters to invent solutions that I could not have possibly imagined. So I make the difficulty a little bit higher than the math would suggest is wise, because I have faith in player characters. And I also have faith in dungeon masters to know their player characters and to adjust it like you did, if things get too hairy.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I think a key to being a successful dungeon master is, I mean, in every scenario, and now I can say this now, it's a bit of a spoiler for past Tides of Retribution stuff, but this is a spoilerific. My players are not supposed to be watching this show, even though some of them sneak in sometimes. But the intention that every, like you said, especially with the first one, but every encounter has an easier way out than the players realize or the characters realize. So, for example, when they're on the deck of the Wave Chaser and they get ambushed, if they focus their fire on their largest problem, which was the shark body abomination, they all abandoned ship. That didn't happen. So, necessarily, right? And it did happen eventually, but they got beat up a lot more than they should have. So, again, I think the mark of a successful DM is the ability to still keep that adrenaline high, that impending doom and death real, but also have a plan in the background to make sure that they have a fair chance to get through this in either way. And, you know, it's a very new school approach, and we've talked about this many times. It's a new school approach to I guess the approach that as DMs, we are here to facilitate fun for our players. We are building a narrative with our players. We're not out to kill them. Even though
you're not playing a tournament at Gen Con like with the Tomb of Horrors. You're playing with your friends at home looking to have a good time.
Exactly. And so, you know, I mean, my players came out of Curse of Strahd, which was last season, and they're like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be the Caribbean coast and oceans and coconuts. No, not so much.
Oh no.
But it was a blast. We had so much fun. And yeah, so that's my take on exactly what you said, which is trust. You have trust in your DMs and their players to be able to adjust as necessary to make it work. Theater major.
Yes. So I am a huge believer in the power of collaboration, both professionally and as a dungeon master and as like a person who lives on the planet Earth. And this is something that I learned studying theater that is very, very applicable to Dungeons and Dragons. And it's got something to do with a thing called audience interaction. And I'm going to start with an example that we may feel wistful for going to the movies. When you go to a movie theater, you are sitting in a packed auditorium and with anywhere from 0 to something like 200 other people. Yeah. And you are watching a movie that has been pre-recorded and edited and scored and so forth. And it's playing off a projector. And nothing you do can affect the film. You can laugh, you can cry, nothing will affect what happens on the screen. But what you and your fellow audience members do will affect how you experience the movie. If you are annoyed by the guy in front of you who is, 8 feet tall and talking to the person next to him, your experience of the movie will be much worse than it could have otherwise been. But if everyone is laughing at the film, the adrenaline is high, the emotions are palpable, then there's a good bet that you will come out of that movie theater happier than had you been in an empty auditorium.
Yeah.
That's collaboration at its most basic level. Audience interaction, other people's emotions have affected yours. When you move into the theater, this is ramped up by about 100 times. Yeah. Not only because audiences at theater showings tend to be more intimately seated for small theaters or more widely filled for big theaters. So the emotions are tighter and closer and bigger, but also because the people performing there are live in front of you.
So true.
Now, you could say, boo, the show sucks, and throw a tomato, and you would certainly get a reaction from the performers. But even if you're just laughing or clapping or cheering or booing, that will subtly affect the performance. Everyone who's been on stage knows what a dead house feels like, and it is disastrous. Yeah. It is the worst possible thing that can happen to a performer short of like an injury or a mental breakdown, because now you are not able to feed off the emotion that the audience is giving you. In fact, it's basically being sucked out of you because the audience is not giving back. It's just a heat sink. But on the other hand, a very lively house can drive emotion and entertainment to a much higher level. So let's move it back to the game table. This is the most intimate audience you can possibly have. It's you and 3 to 7 other people at a table, none of whom are more than 4 feet away from you.
Yeah.
Or you're in Zoom, as the case may be in these times. They're all right. Actually, that's a good example of why Zoom D&D games don't feel quite as lively or fun as games around the table, because you don't have that immediate and present
visceral feedback.
Yeah, exactly. You can't feel the emotions literally rolling off of the other people. But because you are playing D&D, you are literally both the actors and the audience at the same time. So that feedback loop that is present in the theater is doubled down upon. So when things are going bad, the bads are lower. And when things are going well, the goods are higher. And if you're really into narrative role playing and you want those bads, then that can switch the feedback loop a little bit and become this very cool, oh, this sucks so much, hooray, sort of feeling. But all this to say, this look into my weird artsy psyche, to say collaboration is always happening. There's an unfelt collaboration between the author and the dungeon master. There is an immediately felt collaboration between the players and the dungeon master and the players and the other players. And the more you lean into that idea of being a fan of your friends, the more your D&D game is going to pop and come alive. Okay, that's it. That was a big tangent.
Awesome.
I'm ready to take some questions.
And you're totally right. And I'm actually going to sound clip that and give it to my players. And especially the part, even when it comes to what you said about being at the movies, is the people who are watching the movie decide how they're going to take it and how much fun they're going to have. Or how critical they're going to be.
Avengers Endgame in theaters. But the stories about people cheering when... Man. I don't know, spoiler alert for Endgame, Captain America grabs Thor's hammer. It's like that, the movie is transformed. Seeing that movie at home is completely different from seeing it in theaters.
100%. I was there multiple times, and it was unbelievable. And a perfect example of that kind of emotion is, and for those of you who haven't watched last night's episode, cover your ears. But Diarchel, who's been played by Nora this whole time, she was found out. Clovis Concord came on board. They had their fight. Three Earrings found out about it, approached her and said, "Listen, do you want to be a double agent rather than dying? And now you're either going to join the party, going down to the submerged Palmaflora with the helmet on, or with it off. So you decide." Then Nora actually came back with sass and said to her, no, you need to pay me. I actually saved your butts. And she played hardball with it, which was interesting. And then the captain called Snow in, who is her brother, the Tabaxi, who is part of our players, and said she's not to arrive back on board after the Palmaflora thing. Make sure that she stays down there. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things that come out of people taking on even those NPCs that you've created. Again, the NPCs that you created 3 lines of, who is now a central part of our story. And last night, the cliffhanger of the episode was them calling Diarchel into the captain's chamber and locking the door. And now they're going to have a conversation about what should happen to her. So
I've got a quick question for you. Would you say that your players are friendly with Three Earrings, or would you say they are more on the about to mutiny side?
Both. So I think they're kind of on the line. I think that Snow, her own brother, thinks she's out to get him. Even though behind the scenes, Snow asked Diarchel to keep him safe while they went down. But she is a pirate, and she's been friendly to them. Our paladin character, even though Three Earrings is a pirate, she's also very, and even the way that I've been playing her, maybe it's more the way I've been playing her, it's just very what upfront about her intentions, other than the fact until they or up until the sorry after the point that they realize that she's actually a pirate, not a merchant. But yeah, it's kind of 50-50 in a lot of ways, and they still don't even know. But now she has actually said, "Thank you for doing what you did. Thank you for getting the rod. But now I'm putting her fate in your hands," which has given them, and she was completely honest. This is what has happened. She's a mercenary. She's a spy. I would kill her. What are you going to do?
I'm very interested to see what the breakdown, the percentage breakdown of groups who
Yeah.
ally with three earrings versus groups who mutiny on her is, because my playtest group reacted very poorly to her. And I was convinced that three earrings would be a very if not likable character per se, than a character that the people would want to have around as like a trusted companion. And seeing that being totally different from my expectation is one of those little joys of writing an adventure, and just like it's in their hands now.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and yeah, if you have time while you're watching She-Ra and taking a break from She-Ra and watching our stream, she is. I've played her likable, and they're just not sure how to trust her.
Yeah.
But
I played her very cowardly, and that tanked it for me.
Yeah, interesting.
Because she didn't show up in the shark body battle on the deck, and the players eviscerated her for it.
Well, she didn't show up. Yeah, she didn't show up for ours either. But it was also because she was hiding from the Clovis Concord, and they didn't even challenge her on it. Actually, they kind of let it go. But she has been very commanding in the moments that they've had in the role play that they've had. So it's quite interesting. Anyways, I love it. We could talk about this all night. All right, back to questions here from from Crystal, which is a very interesting question. This is from Dag Crystal, and I know what you're probably going to say here. But the question is, who are the bad guys versus the good guys? Are the pirates good, or are the Clovis Concord good, or is no one good?
Oh my gosh!
Welcome to Wildemount.
I have my own answers to that.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, I think there's little doubt that the Clovis Concord are the good guys when pitted against the Revelry pirates. But I think there's a strong case to be made either way. The Clovis Concord, for instance, we saw in Critical Role, spoilers for early Critical Role, that the Clovis Concord enslaves sentient beings, the Jinn, the Mareed, the water genies, within their sewer systems to power their operation. Of the nations of Wildemount, I think the Clovis Concord is the most free, the most egalitarian, the least authoritarian, and so I have a soft spot for them for that reason. It's why I think that even though they do some unjustifiable things, they're one of the only morally upright, generally speaking, powers on Wildemount. But no system is all good.
There's good and bad, right? Even within each
I
system.
would not want the Revelry pirates to take over the Clovis Concord. Is my answer to that question. I do not think good would come of that.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. I like that. Okay. Night Road asks, do you ever return to old works with an eye for revision, or just let it live as it is? The plight of a writer.
Oh my gosh. On a big picture scale, no. If I went back to published works that I sell, my very first work in the Dungeon Masters Guild is an adventure called The Temple of Shattered Minds. And that work is something that I would say, by my current standards, I'm not proud of. By 2016 James Haeck standards, I'm quite proud of it.
Sure.
But and I continue to sell it, and I haven't taken it down because I remain to a degree proud of what I did. And it would be, frankly, a lot of work to bring it up to the standard that I hold myself to now, and that work would simply not be worth it. For smaller things, though, I go back and do minor edits on D&D Beyond articles quite frequently.
Oh, cool.
I edited one that's more than a year old 2 hours ago because there was a typo in it. Because it's very easy to do. There's a simple. It's simple. It's digital. The changes are automatic. My desire to go in George Lucas, my past works, is entirely based on ease, ease of use. There's no way in hell that I can edit a passage that I think could be better in Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, for instance. It simply will not happen. But if it's a little thing, D&D Beyond article that I have full control over, sure.
Awesome. Zexix154 says, what goes wrong with the party killing the Warlock Sahuagin on the DM side? It seemed that you don't want her to die just yet. Please don't spoil what you actually want to do. So I guess from your perspective, because at that point within the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, you have a victory condition and you have a defeat condition that you kind of set there. And I actually will say what I was going to do if they failed. Because at this point, they're probably not going to go back there. She's now dead, so it doesn't even matter. But yeah, what is your, what from the DM side, is there a they should kill her or not kill her kind of bent to the way that you wrote it, or?
The way I write adventures is I am drawn to write what I think is the most interesting possible outcome. And I will write those outcomes first and then provide as much detail as I think is necessary to supply alternate outcomes. And the good thing about that approach for me is it's most interesting to me. It makes the writing easier. I write about things that interest me, and so it just flows. The challenge of that is the things that I find interesting are not necessarily the things that you will find interesting, or that the thousands of other people, or however many people read something I write, will find interesting. And that's that's the dark side of this collaboration thing that I keep talking about, is that you have no way of making people like what you like, and there's simply nothing to be done about that. Other than trying to give people enough options that with enough interest that they will start spinning out new stories on their own. The best thing I can do is write what interests me, and the best thing you can do is write what interests you. And I wish there were an easier way to make both of our lives easier, but creativity is hard, and it's fun.
Yeah, and if there are secret if my players are stealthing on this channel and watching, please cover your ears, because I'm about to spoil what would have happened if you let her live, or if you got defeated. So before last session, I have two guys who are kind of on my plot team who know Critical Role back and forward. They're super critters, and very talented DMs in their own right, Julian and Josh, and they're also my production staff. And so we sit and we talk about the future and where it'll go and all that kind of stuff, and then I take that information and I apply it. But when we realized, wait a second, they may not survive this, what should we do? And we had thought about your kind of the idea of them taking it to the beach and her coming and talking to them and so on and so forth. But because we're continuing it on, I know you had to bring kind of a finality to it. To carry it forward, we were going to have them... so they were all getting knocked out. 3 of the 7 party members went down, unconscious, close to the end of the encounter. And we were going to have them captured, and then they were going to come to in a sea cave that had air, an open air sea cave that was kind of halfway down the cliff or the seawall between where Palma Flora sunk. Basically between the surface of the water and Shark Feather Abyss, where all the rest of the Sahuagin are. And then the Warlock was going to approach them and then take them on a walk through the graveyard of all the sharks that had been killed, and the shark tournament and all of the fishing and stuff has done to not only her people, but also to the coral reef. How now, because all of that fishing has destroyed the ecosystem and imbalanced the ecosystem by taking out one of the apex predators, now it's starting to die. And so there was this whole kind of decision that the players had to make, and how that would affect the revelry and getting them back on the ship, and she was just going to let them go and just say, you know what, I've spread my message, that's what I want to do, and you go on and you do your thing. That didn't go that way. They ended up killing her with the Hail Mary catapult shot from our artificer as she was trying to flee. But yeah, so again, it's taking what you've created as a base and then doing what we can to push it forward and give it wings, which is so exciting. The Antipodian D20 asks, what was the inspiration for a sea-based adventure? Meaning Tides of Retribution. I did a Facebook Live on my page a while ago saying that there should be more sea and air-based adventures. Glad to see, pun intended, a non-land and or non-dungeon adventure. And I furthered that question to say, how did you land the Menagerie Coast adventure of the 4 starting adventures that are in the book? There's 4, right? Not 3?
There's 4, yeah. One for each main region. There's the Xhorhas, Menagerie Coast, Dwendalian Empire, and well, it's kind of a mix between Greying Wildlands and Islecross.
Yep.
The frozen, the frigid north. So one of the first things we did when me, Matt Mercer, James Indercosto, and Chris Lockey all gathered for this project is we said to each other, this book needs an adventure. It needs an adventure. There's no two ways about it. Ravnica had an adventure. Eberron will have an adventure. Yeah. Setting books have got to have adventures because they're a way to get into the setting. That's just like with Heroic Chronicle and the plot hooks. They're a way to quickly get into the stories of the setting. And I think a week passed after we said, let's do an adventure. We all said, yeah. And then a week passed. We all came back and we were like, can we do more? Can we do 4 adventures?
That's great.
And we were all like, Wizards is surely going to cut 3 of these and choose the best one.
Yeah.
Right? But we divided them up among ourselves, James Indercosto, and like there was no argument about who would give what. Matt Mercer was very gracious. He was like, this whole setting is my thing. I'll choose last.
Yeah.
I'll be good no matter where I go.
That's great.
Chris Lockey is big into Cthulhu mythos and creepy nonsense, and so he chose Xhorhas.
Yeah.
I say creepy nonsense with the utmost love.
Yeah, of course.
He is a master of creepy nonsense.
Yes.
James Indercosto instantly gravitated towards Islecross. He wrote that part of the Gazetteer as well, so he wrote the adventure too. And I think I chose somewhere in the middle. I'd like to do Menagerie Coast.
Yeah. What did Matt do?
Because, like I said earlier, of all the places in Wildemount, Menagerie Coast is the freest. It's the most accepting.
Yeah.
It's the most not an empire, totalitarian dictatorship of the places. And I like settings like that. I think that it frees people up from some of the worries of the modern world and lets them just play some D&D without totally removing all the political tension that is inherent to Wildemount, because of still revelry pirates and stuff like that. Also, pirates are fun. Yeah. I felt I would like to do something with pirates.
Sure. Sure. And Palma-Flora was a lot of fun too, just being kind of a Caribbean kind of resort island, and I think my players were like, "What is going on? This is D&D," and it was just, and we had this fun kind of like jungle music that we played in the background, and in Palma-Flora when they arrived, I set it up like a resort where I had like a guy doing, he had a Jamaican accent and he was doing like robo-size on the like boxer size on the beach, and then we had the timeshare salesman in the lobby who was trying to sell cottages to Palma-Flora. Like all those tropes really came out, and it was so much fun. Mm-hmm. And it really gave them a false sense of security. They were like, "Oh, this is great. It's like vacation." Maha.
To answer the second part of the question, why an ocean adventure? It didn't have to be an ocean adventure. It's easy to like look at what exists and think that is the only thing that could exist. And I could have done a dungeon adventure in the sewers of Nicodranus or a different port, just like the Mighty Nine did, or I could have done an undersea adventure. Ghosts of Saltmarsh had recently just come out when we had started working on the book. That was fresh in my mind. It would have been very easy to just go, let's do more undersea stuff. But the pirate angle of the Menagerie Coast, the sailing angle, leapt out to me as the most thrilling and the most fantastical element of the setting.
Right.
And the thing that had been done the least. I have a hard time thinking of any large scale Wizards of the Coast published adventure that has a focus on sailing. Even Ghosts of Saltmarsh, for all its naval rules, vehicle rules, and stuff like that, most of its adventures take place in a dungeon or underwater or something like that. There are a couple of random encounters in the back of the book that involve sailing, but most of the content there just doesn't involve it.
Right.
So I wanted to do something that had not yet been done in 5th edition, and there it is.
Yeah.
Just like Hero Chronicle, I wanted to do something that had not been done in 5th edition that D&D players might be missing out on.
Yeah. And I actually I found it a little hard to go from Curse of Strahd, which, I mean, I've been doing gothic horror vanilla D&D for a very long time. That was very easy for me to grasp. But actually getting into the Menagerie Coast was actually difficult for me at first. And even the sailing and the pirates and that whole, it's just a different world to deal with. It's a different beast to tackle. And I had a bit of a hard time kind of getting my head around how that would work. A Caribbean setting, how does that work? Oceans and beaches, how does that factor? And so I think I've hit my stride now, but it took some time to kind of figure that out because it is so inherently different than anything else that D&D's done before, which was so exciting. We have a couple minutes left. I'm going to leave you with one last comment from someone, and then which is from Deacon Blues Hamilton. James Haeck is someone that should write a fantasy novel. I would buy it. They say. So with that question or comment, please let us know kind of where people can find you and what you're working on now and what they can look forward to in the coming, where they can find your work and all that fun stuff.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I don't know yet what my fantasy heartbreaker novel would be, but it makes me very happy that you have such faith in me. After watching shows and refilling on like fantasy media that has really spoken to me, there is a part of me that wants to just do something straight from me. And sent to you without all of that fun D&D collaboration just to shake things up.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is yet. Anyway, you can find me on Twitter at James J. Haeck. My last name is spelled a little funky, so take a look. You can find me every single week, 3 times a week on dndbeyond.com. Most of the articles there are written by me. I do my best to help dungeon masters and players alike get into starting the game anew or into different parts of D&D that they never knew that they could have fun with. Those are the number 2 places you can find me. Thanks so much. Awesome.
Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate the time that you've given us today and the joy that you've brought our viewers and the heart attacks or the years you've taken off my players' lives with the adrenaline rushes and all of that wonderful stuff. It's been honestly an honor.
I am seeing so many people saying thank you in Twitch chat, and I cannot type into the subscriber only chat, but
sorry,
y'all are amazing. Thank you so much. Your thanks mean the world to me.
Yeah, they're incredible. We have an incredible community that has built around this thing, and again, just playing on, just to speak a little bit to Wildemount, just while I'm waiting for the draw to happen here for the winner here. We started this off by you saying, what Matt Mercer is and what he's brought to the community and how you feel and the fact that we were able to play on a game together and I was able to DM Matt for the first time in his own setting. I can't tell you kind of how much that meant to me as the person who, and many people can claim this, I'm not alone on it, but how many people can claim that he brought them back to D&D, and he did. And the reason I'm doing this today in the form that I am is because of Matt Mercer and Critical Role. So that was incredible, but it was amazing how I wasn't nervous about it. He is such a gracious kind of caring, humble person, that there were no nerves, and you'd think that there would be. But he honestly just felt like a player at the table. I mean, like you said, you sit a little straighter, you cross your T's and you dot your I's and all of that kind of stuff. But it was super, super impactful to me. And coming out of that day was just like unbelievable. And for him to be able to physically pass the torch of Wildemount onto our stream and us be able to traverse this incredible world, penned by yourself and him, has just been an honor. So thank you, James, for doing that and writing the content that has brought so much joy to our viewers and our players. It is wonderful. We do have a winner. That winner is Adabelle Rosette. Adabelle Rosette, if you're hopefully still watching, you have won a digital copy of Wildemount for D&D Beyond. We will be sending you a code that you can enter into D&D Beyond to be able to get that and redeem that. And we will be giving one of those away each week as we go. Again, we want to thank D&D Beyond for their incredible partnership for this season and for seasons to come, as it's been long on my heart to be able to partner with them, because they're wonderful people and they do wonderful things for us. Okay, well, James, stay safe.
Same to you.
Try and not go too stir crazy and break your brain, because we need that wonderful brain of yours for future adventures that will be written. And hopefully, I mentioned this before we started, but hopefully we can have you back as Heidi at some point in the future, because she's such a wonderful character that we haven't dug into, because I didn't want to dig too far until I had you back at the table. So
well, whether it's this campaign with this character or another one with a different one, I'd be happy to come back on.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you Thursday night for Players Table, Sunday night for Nolzur's Marvelous Tutorials, and then, of course, episode 8 on Monday of The Tides of Wildemount. Bye, guys.
Good night, my friends.